What should we tell you about now? John Bercow, the Speaker of the House of Commons, set for another clash with MPs today. He gets to decide whether the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, can hold his meaningful vote. How does it all work? Well, that's what we're trying to do and sort out for you this morning. We can talk now to Alice Lilly from the Institute for Government. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
What do we know about what will happen today?
We know that the government wants to have another go at a meaningful vote, getting MPs to agree to their deal. And crucially, what the government wants is for them to have a straight vote, simply yes or no on the government's deal, which is not what the government was able to have just 48 hours ago. The big problem, as you say, is whether the Speaker will let them do that.
Because why? How could he not?
Well, there's a rule generally in Parliament that MPs can't be asked to decide a question if they've already decided in the same parliamentary session. And although MPs did pass an amended version of the government's deal, they still essentially came up with an answer to that question just 48 hours ago. So the Speaker may well turn around and say it falls foul of that rule.
And that was because of the Letwin Amendment being attached to it. So what about next, when it tries to pass through? What about other amendments that could be attached to it?
The question for MPs is whether they'll want to try and amend this government motion today, if John Bercow allows it. But really, where a lot of the action either way is going to shift to is this withdrawal agreement bill, so the piece of legislation putting the government's deal into law. We're expecting the government to present that bill today. That would mean that we see it for the first time, but there'd be no debate. Tomorrow, debate would begin. And once it's got through that stage tomorrow, that's when we can start expecting MPs to lay lots of amendments on all sorts of things.
And if that happens, then there's the issue of timing, isn't there? Because Boris Johnson has been adamant that the UK will leave the EU by October the 31st. How likely is that to happen if we have all these extra additions from other MPs?
It is still possible, but it will absolutely take up lots of time. There will also be lots of votes. So if we go back to, say, the Maastricht or Lisbon treaties, when they were put into law, they were between 80 and 120 votes on both of those bills. It'll take up a lot of time. The government can try and control the timetable in the Commons. They will table something probably tomorrow called a programme motion to allow them to say, this is how much time we want to spend in the Commons, but there's no guarantee that MPs will agree to that. And if they don't, then getting everything done by the 31st of October looks very difficult.
What about a second referendum amendment? How would that play into this?
So it looks as though there will absolutely be an amendment calling for a second referendum tabled to the withdrawal agreement bill. Labour have indicated that they would back that amendment, but it's still not clear whether it actually has the numbers to get through the Commons. Even if it did, that would not be the end of the matter, because in order to hold the referendum, you would need legislation to set out what the question would be, who could vote on it, and there would be all of these practical logistical steps. It's estimated that that would take about 22 weeks in order to happen, so it's still a very long process to get to a second referendum.
And just to go back almost to the beginning, now hearing from MPs from MPs from both sides, it does appear that if there was just a straight, meaningful vote, the government has the numbers.
It does. It's looking like it will still be very tight, but the government might have the numbers. So if the government is able to hold that vote today, if MPs agree to it, the government will hope that that builds momentum so that they can get this legislation done quite quickly.
Alice, thank you very much for explaining all of that. Alice Lilly there from the Institute for Government.